Hi, in today's session, I will re-explain or revisit shortly the key concept of our section, the central and peripheral nervous system, and I will explain also the spinal cord and the autonomic nervous system, and the somatic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, the reflex arc. Now, the key concept here, the central nervous system interprets information and the peripheral nervous system gathers and transmits information. How this happen? So, the nervous system's two parts work together. The parts are the central nervous system, which includes the brain, brainstem, and spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system, or PNS, includes 4 systems of nerves. So this is the CNS, brain and spinal cord, and the brainstem. This is the brainstem, brainstem, spinal cord, and the light yellow here is the peripheral nervous system. So, the CNS and the PNS pass signals between one another, of course. Sensory receptor generates impulse. So, we have sensors in our bodies, sensors that sense things like heat, temperature, water, air, pain, pressure, okay? PNS passes impulses to the CNS. So the sensors are part of the peripheral nervous system, which will pass these impulses to the central nervous system. Then the central nervous system will interpret the impulse. And then the CNS will pass impulse back to the PNS, and the PNS will stimulate a response. So it all starts with the PNS and will end in the PNS. The PNS, the sensor receptor generates the impulse. The PNS will pass the impulse to the central nervous system. The central nervous system will interpret the impulse. Then will pass the impulse back to the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system will stimulate the response. Now, how the central nervous system processes the information? The brain has 3 major parts. Part 1, the cerebrum. Cerebrum controls thought, movement, emotions. When you're crying, when you're happy, when you're sad, when you are bored, these feelings you are having is responsible by the cerebrum. When you are thinking, when you are reading, when you are not reading, actually, when you are thinking about like studying, for example, or I'm thinking, I think I'm hungry. This thinking process is the cerebrum responsibility. The movement also. The second part of the brain is the cerebellum. Cerebellum allows the balance. The cerebellum responsible for your balance. So, this is the cerebrum and this is the cerebellum. I already explained this and showed you a video. The third part is the brainstem, controls basic life function. What are these basic life functions? Breathing, all basic life functions controlled by the brainstem. The brainstem composed of 3 parts. The midbrain in the purple, pons in the green color, medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata is the red one, okay? Now, the brainstem, these are the parts. So the midbrain controls the reflexes, some reflexes. Pons regulates breathing. So when you breathe, it's the responsibility of pons inside the brainstem. The medulla oblongata controls heart functions, swallowing, coughing. So when you cough, when you swallow, your heartbeats is responsible by medulla oblongata. So the brainstem controls the basic life functions. So this is the brainstem, three parts: the midbrain, the pons, medulla oblongata. Now, after this, the spinal cord controls reflexes. So what is spinal cord? By the way, this is the spinal cord. Is the cord that runs through inside your backbone, protected by your backbone. Now, or vertebrae. Now, the spinal cord control reflexes. Sensory neuron sends impulse to spinal cord. So, a sensory neuron in your body will send a certain impulse, a specific impulse to the spinal cord. Then, the spinal cord directs this impulse to motor neuron. Motor neurons are neurons that are responsible for movement. These does not involve the brain. In this scenario, these reflexes does not involve the brain. So we have a sensory neuron here, okay? A sensory neuron will generate an impulse. The impulse will go to the medulla oblongata. Inside the medulla oblongata, this will the impulse will be interpreted, then send back the impulse through motor neurons. Motor neurons will cause the reflex. Now, I want to show you this before we advance ahead. Now, let's hear this together and apply accordingly.
The spinal cord controls involuntary movements called reflexes. Reflex arcs are nerve pathways that only cross two synapses before producing a response. Because the signal does not travel up the spinal cord to the brain, you react quickly. Click on the patient just below the knee to observe a reflex.
So, this is the whole pathway. We call it reflex arc. Reflex arc. So the whole pathway, we call it reflex arc. Now, this is the reflex arc. Okay, how this process happen? Let's see.
Click on the patient's knee again to see the impulse move in slow motion. A sensory neuron in the leg is stimulated when you tap the knee. The sensory neuron sends an impulse to the spinal cord. An interneuron in the spinal cord directs the impulse into motor neurons that cause the leg to jerk.
This is the motor neuron that causes the response. This is the response. Okay, let's start it again.
Click on the patient's knee again to see the impulse. The spinal cord controls involuntary movements called reflexes. Reflex arcs are nerve pathways that only cross two synapses before producing a response. Because the signal does not travel up the spinal cord to the brain, you react quickly. Click on the patient just below the knee to observe a reflex.
Good. Guys, I need you to focus on how much time does it take. Okay? How much time does it take? It takes only a portion of a second. Like something per second, okay? So it's very, very quick and fast, guys. Now, let's see it.
Click on the patient's knee again to see the impulse move in slow motion.
Now,
a sensory neuron in the leg is stimulated when you tap the knee. The sensory neuron sends an impulse to the spinal cord. An interneuron in the spinal cord directs the impulse into motor neurons that cause the leg to jerk.
Good. This is the reflex itself, okay? So, the spinal cord control reflexes. This is a reflex, and by the way, it's a standard diagnostic, clinical diagnostic inside any neurologist. They will tap on your knee to see how healthy is your response. Okay, so this pathway, the whole pathway from the knee to the spinal cord and back, we call it reflex arc, the pathway. Okay, so spinal cord impulse, the sensory neuron sends the impulse to the spinal cord directs the impulse to motor neurons, then the reflex will happen. And the brain is not involved in these involuntary reflexes. Now, the peripheral nervous system links the central nervous system to muscles and other organs. So how this happen? So again, we say, guys, that the central nervous system is not directly connected to the organs. The central nervous system is connected to the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is the connection between the central nervous system and the organs. So we have something called the somatic nervous system. The somatic nervous system regulates voluntary movements. So voluntary movements is the movement that you are in control of, like walking. You can control walking. You want to walk. You want to walk. You don't want to walk. It's up to you. You can control this. You can control stretching your hands, stretching your body. Okay, this is voluntary movement. Now, the autonomic nervous system controls involuntary functions. Involuntary functions like your digestive tract, the breathing, heart beating. These functions are involuntary. Breathing, involuntary also. Okay. So we have sympathetic nervous system, which is fight versus flight. I will explain this. And we have autonomic nervous system, parasympathetic. So let's see how this works, guys. I want to explain this as much as I can to you. Now, the nervous system composed of central nervous system. The central nervous system is only plugged to the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system composed of autonomic nervous system, which controls the involuntary actions, and the somatic nervous system, which controls the voluntary actions. Now, this somatic nervous system is only plugged to the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system composed of sympathetic nervous system, action and stress, which is responsible for action and stress, and to parasympathetic nervous system, which calm and relaxation. So the sympathetic nervous system is responsible for action and stresses, the actions and the stress you are facing. Okay, then we'll convey the message to the autonomic nervous system. If the autonomic nervous system, so its voluntary action will transport the signal to the somatic nervous system. The somatic nervous system will transmit it to the peripheral nervous system, to the central nervous system, and back. And if this is something involuntary action, so the sympathetic will autonomic nervous system to PNS, to CNS, and back. Now, if it's calm and relaxation, like you are in the beach and laying down in the beach, getting a suntan, this is a relaxation and calm. So here the parasympathetic will send a signal to the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system will analyze this. If it's involuntary, we'll continue. If it's not, we'll go to the somatic nervous system because it's voluntary action. Okay? So, again, guys, the nervous system composed of central nervous system, peripheral linked to the autonomic nervous system and the somatic nervous system. The somatic nervous system responsible for voluntary actions, autonomic nervous system for involuntary actions like breathing, here like walking. Now we have parasympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nerve, sympathetic nerve. Okay? So the sympathetic nerve will be responsible to getting the action and the stress. The parasympathetic nerves will be responsible for calm, sensation, and relaxation. Okay. This is the end of our section today. I hope you understood. Thank you very much. I hope I can see you soon. Be safe. Goodbye.